Christians believe that Jesus is the Son of God, or he's the second part of the Trinity, and that Jesus is God. However, the Quran, which comes about 600 years after Jesus, says something different. The Quran says that Jesus is nothing more than a messenger or a prophet. In the Quran, chapter 4, verse 150, or I'm sorry, in the Quran, chapter 4, verse 171, Quran, chapter 4, verse 172, Quran, chapter 5, verse 17, Quran, chapter 5, verse 46, the Quran, chapter 5, verse 72, the Quran, chapter 5, verse 75, etc., etc. In the Quran, chapter 19, verse 30, or the Quran chapter 19 verses 1 to 30, etc., etc. So basically, the Quran all over the place in both the Meccan and the Medinan surah says that Jesus is a prophet or a messenger. So the question really arises: who's right? Is the Christian concept or is the New Testament concept that Jesus is God or the Son of God correct, or is the Quranic concept or the Islamic concept of Jesus right, that Jesus was nothing but a human or a prophet? Well, in order to solve this problem, we need to go to the New Testament and see, does the New Testament actually support the idea that Jesus is not God and he's lesser than God? And when we read the New Testament, we see places that actually agree with the Quran concept that Jesus is not God, and in fact, Jesus is denying that he's God. So it seems like the Quran's statements about Jesus is actually found uh, is actually supported by the New Testament itself, even though Christians believe Jesus is the Son of God and Jesus is God, which doesn't really find support in the New Testament. But anyways, I'm going to be focusing on one verse. One verse is the Gospel of John, chapter 20, verse 17. It says, and I'm reading from the King James Version, it says, Jesus said unto her, her is Mary Magdalene, touch me not, for I have not yet ascended to my Father, but go to my brethren and say unto them, I ascend unto my Father and your Father, and to my God and to your God. So this verse, basically, this is, if you want like one of the strongest proofs that Jesus is not God and there's no such thing as the Trinity. If you're arguing with Christians or whatever, quote them the Gospel of John chapter 20 verse 17. This is the strongest proof in the New Testament that there's no Trinity. So basically, after Jesus's alleged resurrection, Jesus said to Mary that he was ascending to my God and your God. So pay attention to what Jesus says. He says, I'm ascending to my God and your God. Jesus' statement makes it clear that God is both his God and Mary Magdalene's God. If Jesus is God, he cannot have a God. For by definition, if someone has a God, he cannot be God. If Jesus had a God, as he said, then he cannot be part of that God. So this is proof that Jesus is basically saying that he's separate from God. He has a God, thus he cannot be that same God. And Jesus also says in the book of Revelation, chapter 3, verse 2 and 12, Jesus speaks of my God to both the churches of Sardis and Philadelphia. So when Jesus says my God in the book of Revelation, chapter 3, verse 2 and 12, and the book of Revelation, chapter 3, verse 12, Jesus is basically denying that he's God and that Jesus has a God. If Jesus says my God, that means he has a God. That means Jesus is not God. So basically, the New Testament in the Gospel of John, chapter 20, verse 17, and the book of Revelation, chapter 3, verse 2, and the book of Revelation, chapter 3, verse 12, is separating God from Jesus. It's saying that Jesus has a God, and he says my God. So God is separate. So God is separate from Jesus, and Jesus is separate from God, according to the theology or according to the verses of the New Testament. So Jesus is saying he has a God, thus Jesus is directly admitting that he is not God, according to the New Testament pages. So it seems like the Quran, what the Quran says about Jesus, that Jesus is not God and Jesus has a God, is supported by the verses of the New Testament itself. Stay tuned. The final videos are coming up.